So recording. Right. Hello everyone, and welcome to a weird episode, Claire's Based Talkathon. As you might notice, there's a completely different background for today's episode. That's because it's not a normal episode. So I actually don't have a guest today. I'm actually doing this on my own. So let me know what you guys think of this format. I'll just real quick, if you like the video, if you enjoy it, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, check out my socials in the description, and let's get started. So today I want to rank the characters from Our Flag Means Death. This is a show that came out pretty recently as of making, and so far this is just season 1. So if you haven't watched season 1, go watch it right now to avoid spoilers. And we will get right into it. This tier list doesn't look perfect. Like, there's a few, why is there 2 steeds? Obviously there's Badminton and his brother, but I don't know. You can never trust these things. Anyways, let's get started with, starting from top left to bottom right. We have Dread Black Pete. Dread Black Pete is one of my favorite characters. He's amazing disability representation. He's got some amazing delivery. He's absolutely hilarious. And he's also just has some of the most interesting subtext. For instance, his relationship with Lucius has a lot of implications with the whittled finger, where he's kind of extending his hand as a disabled person to be recognizing that he's now in a really shitty situation and being there for him. And that's a very beautiful thing that is for me at least, was a really a big part of the show, was that sort of very subtle stuff. Not to mention also the whole gag of him pretending to be Blackbeard's former right-hand man, and then Blackbeard and his actual right-hand man, who is... where is he? There he is. Is he hiding behind the little fucking stump there on the bottom left? The fact that he actually has to meet Blackbeard is so funny. I love that. And also just this mutiny. He's got so many hilarious lines, and I think that he's awesome. So he is someone I would put into this maximum tier. Again, I had to edit the tiers because they were something silly, but essentially I'm rating it from characters that I wouldn't change, basically perfect, and then going down from there. There's no F rank because I genuinely love all these characters, but some of them aren't the best. Next up we have Lucius. Lucius is hilarious. There's so many great situations. The whole thing where he finds Jim and, without their get up, and he's like, I'm great at keeping secrets. My mom thought I liked girls for years. The way that he's the only literate, crew member other than Jim, but Jim has to hide it, Jim's literate in Spanish anyway, so it doesn't really translate. Lucius is just amazing. And his relationship with Black Pete and a lot of the other pirates is so good, like Fang. And so it's just, he's definitely not perfect. There are some scenes where he feels a little dry or something like that. Or there's a lot of scenes with him that feel like he could be doing something just a bit different to make it better, but ultimately he's still really, really good, and I personally don't think I'm in the authority to try and decide what should be, like, what would be changed. Next up, we have Mr. Buttons. Mr. Buttons is an absolute classic. One of my favorite characters as well. Um, he's definitely not nearly as complex as a lot of these other characters, even some of the minor ones, but he's got an amazing knack for being this insane comic relief. He reminds me a lot of Macbeth witch character while also being a pirate, and he's also just, at the end of the day, um, he's so absurd that it's hard to say that he's, it's like I appreciate him as a character a lot because of his absurd comedy. Like, there's so many individual scenes where his dialogue just ends up being, laugh out loud level stuff. It's fucking ridiculous. And I love him. But again, not very complicated character. Not that I want him to be, but it's just like, unfortunately, it's just not something that is, he's not a character that's designed to be fleshed out. And so he's not really in a position to be really good. Next up we have Roach, the chef. Roach is funny. He's got some great scenes, cutting off Lucius's finger, being like, it's just a dream, Yardies is great. But ultimately, he just doesn't really have much going for him. There's not a lot of scenes with him, and there's just, there's a considerable amount of stuff with Roach where he is just there for the sake of being a pirate, member of the pirate crew, and that's fine. But like, if he were to be he has very little going for him on his own. Oluwande is. It's hard to explain why I love Olu so much, but it's essentially because of his relationship with Jim, and also being a voice of reason similar to Lucius, but in a better way. Like, Olu isn't as funny, and that's why I put Lucius higher, and also because he doesn't have, like he also has a really good relationship with Jim, but Jim kind of carries that. And these two have a great relationship, but Lucius is kind of less so, awesome. And again, I love all these actors, I love all their roles, I love all the characters, but comparatively, Olu just, like, he doesn't have very much comedy, and I'm really hoping that in season 2 they flesh out his backstory, because Spanish Jackie talks about him, recommending Jim in the first place. So that's going to be very interesting to see where they go with Olu, and honestly, I love to see more of him. Next up we have Wee John. Wee John is funny, and I like Wee John. He's got some great lines, and it's hard to say where to put him. I've been back and forth on him. For now, I think I'll put him just above Roach, because while I love the two of them, I think that Wee John has just a little bit more going for him in terms of comedy, and has a more consistent persona. Frenchie's awesome. Frenchie's solid B tier. He's got a lot going for him. He's got some great lines. He's got the whole, superstitions and stuff. He's very like tonally indifferent in many ways, where he's just kind of like, he always has the same thing going for him, the same attitude. So he's funny, and I like him, but there's just not a lot of complexity, and I would like to see him fleshed out more, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. The Swede is a little similar to Frenchie, where it's like, he's funny, but he's got even less going for him. And I mean, the only real reason I like him is because of the is because of his whole the scurvy episode where they go to St. Augustine. And it's like, that's the only really like that's the only thing that's like really going for him in terms of comedy and depth. Next up we have Jim. Oh my god, Jim is so good. So the reason I love Jim so much is because not only are they an amazing non-binary character, who has like an absolutely like perfect gender exploration story, but also it's never direct. It's never super up in your face. It's always, oh, I am a fugitive who's been living by a different name, so I guess I'll continue living by that name. It's not, like my nana is remembering um, my my name and then I have to correct her on it. It's that I literally go by a different name because I'm not, the person I used to be. There's so many awesome things with them. They look so cool. They're hot. I love the actor. They're awesome, and just the whole archetype of the the stoic assassin raised from birth is something that I wouldn't have expected in a pirate show, especially with something this lighthearted. And I think that like their relationship with Olu is really well done. Really explores the concept of like trauma really well, and also just overall, I think that the two um, are they like Olu brings out the best in Jim. Like the lines about what's your favorite color, and they say teal, and Olu has a teal earring. It's like those little beautiful things that work so well. Next up, we have Mary. Mary's A tier. I think she's awesome. I love her character arc. I think her acting is a little bit strange, but it works for her character 100%. Like the concept of having the housewife, like that. Like one of my favorite lines in the show, one of the favorite dramatic lines is her being like, what is it? I don't want a fucking boat, Steed. I don't hate our lives. At least not so much that I'd want to go live on the fucking ocean. Or something like that. She's awesome. I love the way that she's introduced in the beginning and then has a little bit of flashback stuff and then has this amazing character arc that's expanded upon and revealed at the very end. So good. The way that they introduce like the last episode with her whole backstory with what is it? What's his name? I don't know. His her the partner, whatever the fuck his name is. I don't know. Point is, she's awesome. I love her. I love her character arc, and I think that she's like very cohesive as a character. Um, and I really enjoyed her. And the reason she's not that high is because ultimately she doesn't get much screen time and is a very small role. So like she's good for what she does, but really she doesn't contribute much to the overall show. Next up is Papa. So for reference, I'm using a tier list that I created earlier to, to cross-reference, but I don't think that had the dad. No, it didn't. So, yeah, he's okay. I think that he's an interesting character, and he's very like he's realistic, but realistically one-dimensional. So I'd probably put him in D tier. He fulfills his role. He says, what was it? He's like, you'll be nothing but a lily-livered little rich boy. He does his job, but at the end of the day, it's not the most impressive thing in the world. It's fine. It's okay. It's serviceable, but ultimately, I just feel like there's a lot more that you can do with a character like that, and And while, like, again, I don't have like any specific improvements I would make, I just think that, you know, he's just ultimately, you know, he serves the plot and acts as motivation for Steed and stuff, but on his own, he's basically nothing. Okay, next up we have Spanish Jackie's husband. Don't even remember his name, but yeah, he's a fucking wild card. I'd say he's a little bit above Frenchie. No, come on, there we go. Because he's funny. He's, you know, for the small screen time he gets, he fucking kills his role. I think, perfectly cast. You know, all of his lines about people having balls is hilarious. You know, because I'm a fucking child. But ultimately, he just, you know, he again kind of falls into that trap of serving a purpose. And while he does it really well, you know, he does it extremely well, and is given plenty of screen time, it just ultimately doesn't contribute a lot to the overall show. Because that's kind of what this is it's like, how much do they contribute to the show, and how good are they based on what's given. So like Jim, I'm like, I wouldn't change anything about Jim. They're perfect. Their placement on this is based on the fact that the show is so much, so heavily focused on representation and avoiding expectation, and they are like the embodiment of that without making it forced. You know, there's no forced representation in this show, I think, and they're the perfect example of it. And then, you know, Papa is just fucking there for the plot, and, you know, they could have cut him for time, you know what I mean? Like, and I say that not to say that this actor did a bad job, but just like, this character was not written to hold the show up. Calico Jack. Calico Jack is a tough one, because he has very little screen time, but he's fucking so funny. The scene where he pisses on Steed's shoes after talking about having gay sex with, or implied gay sex with Blackbeard, is so fucking good. And he's only in it for one episode, but like the way that he betrays him, and, you know, Yardies, Brecky, Whippies, it's just like such a fucking, like, it's such a disrupt to the flow of the show in such a perfect way that I can't help but put him really high on the list. And like, it's like the only episode that at first feels episodic, if that makes sense, or it's like, oh, this isn't a coherent narrative, and then they switch it on you, and it turns out that he's actually extremely important to the plot. So well done. Absolutely love it. Okay, next up we have Spanish Jackie. Spanish Jackie is solidly in between these two. Essentially, she's cool. She's funny. I love the way she interacts with Jim and Olu. I think that her dialogue between, you know, her dialogue with the husband character is really good, but ultimately, you know, she doesn't have too much going on. Badminton. So in the original tier list, I treated the brothers as the same person, because it's the same actor, but in this case it's separate. Badminton goes solidly below the wife. He serves the purpose. He expands upon this sort of trauma that, like, the dad and Mary are, you know, are about portraying. But ultimately he is, you know, he is a caricature, and, you know, the real thing I like about him is when he dies and is instead channels the subconscious beliefs and ideas of Steed. I think that's like awesome. I think it's really well done, and like, you know, not perfectly executed, and it's definitely not like the main star of the show, but it's a big part of it and why the first episodes are so good. Now we have Izzy. Izzy is a tough one because I love Izzy. He's a bastard and he's a terrible person, but God, I love Izzy. Izzy Hands is a character that is, in my opinion, representative of Blackbeard. He acts as the part of Blackbeard's ego that is in love with himself, that is, that is obsessed with being powerful and being able to conquer systems that used to put him down, and rejoicing in it. And it's a very difficult thing to explain in short time without talking too much about Blackbeard. But essentially, Izzy is representative of all the scenes where Blackbeard is Blackbeard rather than Edward, and I think he nails that role. His voice is perfect. The way that he conducts himself is great. I love the duel. I love the fucking toe scene. Yeah, Izzy is awesome. So he gets solidly placed into S tier. It's hard to say where he should go, but honestly, he just really isn't that funny. I think because I used to, in my reference, I put him below Olu, but I think I'm gonna put him directly above because he's just got so much going for him from from in terms of interpretation, that he's just awesome. Not to mention he's also actually based on a real guy, and the way that they mess with the concept of being historically accurate is so cool in this show. And he's like a great example of that, being like, there was a man named Israel Hands who was, who worked with Edward Teach, but they take that and turn him into this, this version, an embodiment of him where he's very callous, cold-hearted, and ultimately just doesn't have a lot of, what would be the word? He doesn't empathize with anyone. He's very stuck in his ways. He's very outdated in a lot of his thinking. And I think that's what makes him so interesting. Is is representing that sort of going back on progress and rejecting change for the sake of misguided self preservation. He doesn't act irrationally. He acts to save himself. There's that whole interaction where it's like, I haven't died yet, and he's like, because that makes sense. Izzy Hands is not someone who cares about what's going on or what you feel. Even though he is an extremely emotional person, he believes himself to be acting 100% rationally. And while sometimes he is, ultimately he's misguided by anger against those who have wronged him, like Blackbeard's father. So just there's, and also the oppressive system that led him into poverty and forced him to be a pirate in the first place. Izzy is that sort of rebelling against the system in a way that ends up hurting everyone. So yeah. Now we have the mom of Jim, Nana. Can't remember her actual name. She's great. I'd put her above Roach. She's cool, but honestly, it just feels like a lot of stuff that Jim could have said themselves. Yeah, that's basically all I have to say. The whole backstory with Siete Gallos is awesome, and the Spanish makes it. The way that they integrate Spanish into the story is so well done, and she's such a big symbol for that. Yeah, Olu does that too. So I'm actually bumping him up just because of integrating multicultural language, and bilingual stuff into a show so seamlessly and effortlessly. Um, yeah. Next up we have. I fucking don't know. This guy sucks. He has one funny line, or he's like, we got at least a little bit of meta, but like, just there's fucking nothing going on, man. Fang is funny, and I love him, but yeah, I'll put Roach a little bit lower because ultimately Fang is his interactions with Lucius are great, and he's hilarious. I'm gonna skip over Steed and Blackbeard for the brother. Yeah, honestly, yeah, the brother is, he's got a few funny lines, but because he has that whole scene where he finds Steed in his sleep and puts a gun to his head and is like, I'm gonna kill you, and that's beautiful, beautiful tragedy, but honestly, it's still not very good. I'm not sure about that placement, but ultimately he serves his purpose. He's not nearly as fleshed out as the original Badminton, but whatever. And now we have these two, Blackbeard and Steed. We'll start with Steed. Steed is the very top of S tier. He is an extremely good character and propels the entire show. He's the rudder. No, not the rudder. He's the sail. He's the sail of the ship, guiding it where it needs to go and giving it power. But ultimately, he relies super heavily on the rest of the cast. And so while he is amazing, I think his relationship with Edward is awesome. His relationship with the crew is awesome. With Lucius, the way that he's so jealous of Will Arnett's Calico Jack, the way that he introduces himself at, Spanish Jackie's bar, the way that he interacts with Izzy Hands, the way that he interacts with his wife, the way that he interacts with Badminton, the way that he, interacts with, like his family, like young Steve is also like a really great actor as well. And like there's so many amazing things about him. He's so funny, but ultimately, he he gets a shit ton of screen time and has a lot of lines, but ultimately, like, he still isn't able to really, he still relies super heavily on everyone else, and like, that's fine. It's just that I definitely think that they could have made him bigger and more important by decreasing the size of some of these other roles, or by just making the show longer. Again, cuts for time and all that, but... And now we have Edward Teach. Edward Teach, where do we put you? Where do we put Edward Teach? Yeah. If you've watched the show, this shouldn't come as a surprise. Blackbeard is amazing. So, I'll just get started with the basics. The way that he's presented as an apathetic version of the legendary Blackbeard is hilarious. Being like, maybe I should try dying. Izzy Hands is like, I fucking hate Steve Bonnet and his dumbass, and Edward Teach is like, seems like a funny guy. Seems like someone I might want to meet, as a person, because like as much as I do, have that sort of self-preservation and determination. I also just want to have fun, you know? This guy seems like he knows how to have fun. And how that develops into being like, I have a murder plot. I'm going to steal Steed's identity. But really, that's just a way to convince his ego to let go. He's like, yes, I have this plan, but he knows in his heart that he couldn't do that. And he doesn't, you know? He completely falls in love with Steed. He loves him more than anything else. And, you know, I think this is why Mary is so important, is she has the monologue about love. It's like, what is it like to fall in love? And she's like, it's the easiest thing I've ever done. It's such a poetic way of putting romance. You know, Blackbeard doesn't have to try at all. And he's just enthralled. It's so beautiful. And I'm it's just such an amazing relationship that from the very beginning. The way that he is like, you know, and he tries to feed his ego by being like, yes, I'm going to learn how to be a gentleman, but in reality he's just getting to know Steed, you know. And then when he gives up on the assassination, he can't control his ego anymore, and that's when the duel occurs. Izzy is like, fuck you, Steed. I fucking challenge you to a fucking duel. Because ultimately, Steed is a threat to Blackbeard's ego. It's a challenge. It's saying, you are weak. You are able to stop fighting. You're opening yourself up. You're allowing people to have power over you. And that can't happen. It's very sad. But ultimately, you know, he's a very damaged man. And he can't easily, you know, fight against that sort of, you know, internal struggle within himself to overcome his own trauma in mind. Yeah. And, you know, because ultimately he really does let himself go a lot, you know, the way that he'll go out, you know, looking for treasure or sleep on a man's ship that he's never set foot on before. He's putting himself at so much risk. And every single time that he thinks about it, there's always that nagging Izzy hand saying, you're gonna get yourself killed. Nothing that you'll ever have done will be worth anything. You'll not have changed anything. And you'll be just like everyone before you, a weak little bitch. It's similar to Steed's conflict. But unlike Steed, he truly has conquered that. Steed is a shitty pirate, yeah, but Blackbeard is legendary. He is amazing, and he still gives into that ego of being like, I must maintain my persona and conquer everything to prove that I'm worthy. It's a shame. There's a lot of really great things about Blackbeard as well that are very subtle. For instance, I think that, you know, a queer relationship being between two older individuals is really important. You know, like portraying queerness not as something that happens between teenagers, but can be like a very serious, long-term thing outside of, you know, hormonal fluctuations. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just some, you know, on a whim thing at a time in your life where everything is on a whim. These men have lived their lives for years and are meeting each other and falling in love. You know, as people who, you know, like, as you grow older, your brain, it becomes harder and harder to change, and to fall in love is to change a lot. At least that's my understanding. And so Steed kind of opens up this side of Blackbeard that was there but was hidden, that was wanting to break free. He's like, I'm so fucking bored, you know. I'm like, I've proven that I'm good. I can leave. But in reality, he still hasn't proven it himself to himself. Another thing is how fucking funny he is. Oh my god, Blackbeard's hilarious. All of his lines, you know, you have a bird guy, the snakery, all that shit. His interactions with Will Arnett, his fucking, you know, all of his, you know, interactions with Steed end up being so fucking funny. All of his stuff with the fine fabrics, you know, being like, skin that guy with the fucking snail fork. Like, there's so many hilarious lines from him that he single-handedly is the funniest character in the show. Like, fucking comedic genius, Taika is. And he, like, perfectly plays Blackbeard. And so, like, it just makes it all the worse when the ending happens. You know, there's the beautiful kiss. Fucking love those gay ass pirates. Anyways, yeah, it's like they have this beautiful interaction, and then he loses it. He can't fight the ego anymore. He gives in. He lashes out against himself, and inevitably becomes the worst version of himself, which is Blackbeard. Blackbeard. Fucking villainous bitch. Yeah. He, you know, and I think that, like, the way that they set up season 1 is heavily contingent on Blackbeard. Like, the way that they abandon his ship and he says, I don't even need to have the flag anymore. There's going to be a fucking montage of, you know, Blackbeard's men pirating without him, pretending he's there. And he's going to rejoin them and be like, alright, crew, let's fuck shit up. You know, Jim is going to have to, you know, still has a bunch, you know, what, 5 of the Siete Gallos to hunt down. You know, there's still plenty of crew members that haven't really been fleshed out. We don't really know where Pete is from or where Lucius is from. Like, Lucius is a pickpocket? Why is he a pickpocket? You know, we barely know anything about Olu. And, you know, like, what's gonna happen with, who are the crew members of Blackbeard's, you know, ship that didn't come along? What kind of people, what characters are we going to meet then? What are they going to be like? And how are they going to react to Blackbeard, you know, being, fully feeding into his ego. He's not sick and tired of being a pirate anymore. He's fully committed again. Are they going to be proud of him? Are they going to be scared? Maybe both? I don't know. Or, for example, the way that Blackbeard's he talks a lot about the portrayals of Blackbeard being this man with 9 swords and 9 guns and smoke billowing out, and by the end he's fully committed to it. He's like putting makeup on the charcoal or whatever to look more scary. Like, that whole art of fuckery thing. I think that's gonna be expanded upon in the most horrifying way. In the scariest, saddest way possible. Yeah. Also, not to mention, Steed is still fucking, he's he doesn't have a ship anymore. He barely has a crew because they're all worthless. And it's what the fuck are they gonna do? Well, it's sad, but I truly do think that season 2 is gonna be amazing. Overall, the whole show is fucking 10 out of 10, and I love it. But yeah, season 2. Fuck, man, this is a cliffhanger. I think I'd probably do fucking 8 seasons of this show, I swear. Anyways, that's it from me. I love Our Fire Means Death, and I highly recommend it. So, if you liked this experimental episode, please like the video, tell me what worked, tell me what didn't. Make sure to check out my TikTok at Claire Theswitch, check out my SoundCloud, Claire Theswitch, and also, I didn't really talk about it this time, but if you're interested in starting a savings account that's got a decent interest rate while also being a little bit fun, I would recommend Yada. It's a mobile banking service. Sign up with code SWITCH, get 100 chances at $10 million. And it's not, your chances are low, but most people don't save anyways, so it's only $25 to join, so I'd recommend it. And that's it for me. See you guys all next week, and yeah. Oh, also, if you want to be a guest on the podcast, hit me up on my email, on my TikTok, on the YouTube comments. Just be able to communicate to me in any way you want, any method you want. I will be just trying to respond on all of those fronts. So yeah, bye everyone. Have a good day.